All right. So thank you so much for drawing us all together, Jennifer, and putting on this reading. I know you've had a dreadful bout of the flu and you've sort of risen from the deathbed of coughing and laryngitis. And so I'm very happy to do the reading. I just hope you can read all your poems. So I'm putting out a little prayer for that. And it's wonderful to see everybody. Yeah, Zoom is great. Wonderful. So we would like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We are grateful to have the opportunity to be present in these territories. We would like to express gratitude to and honor the people who have lived and worked on this land since time immemorial. It is important to understand the long-standing history that brought us to reside on the land and to seek to understand our role in that history. And our first reader is going to be John Outen. Born in Guelph, Ontario, John Outen has lived in Nova Scotia, Egypt, Iraq, and Japan. He is the author of 5 poetry books, most recently Time Slip with Guernica Editions, and a new collection now being considered by publishers. He has also written a mystery novel, Death by Triangulation, which is fabulous. Read it if you haven't. It's in the library or buy it. The nonfiction Higher Teaching, a handbook for new post-secondary faculty, and over 400 articles, reviews, and blogs. A retired college professor, he lives in Toronto and is a creative photographer, guitar player, and kayak paddler. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Brenda. So I'm going to read some things from my new manuscript, which I'm just waiting for the contract, but I do have a new book coming out. The title is The Universe and All That. So this is a collection that involves some ekphrastic poems about art, some other things. I'm just going to pick from sort of 2 themes in it. One is kind of elegies, which are not much fun, but then the second one is love, romance, and disappointment, which is probably more fun. And I'm also going to subject you to a little over 2 minutes of my guitar playing as a backup for my first 2 poems. So let me see if I can get this working. Okay. Can you see that? Oh, can anyone see the video? Okay, so I hope you're hearing this. Drinking with the dead. No thirst like that from bones, dry to the marrow, bleached and bleached. I am alone above ground, the dead, excellent company. They listen, wisely adding nothing. Do not rail at red hot sitting on a tombstone, ear grazing the graves, squirrel burying its small tribute. I take them fine brews, Belgian and German, a sip for me, then one for the arid earth, but only for the dormant poets. Those Eatons and Masseys already hoisted the best. They can taste Molson Canadian and like it. So a toast to the dead, their city of silence, soft presence on the air. Washed up. Unnoticed while alive by most, he passed here in full ritual, Sirens, lights beating like frantic hearts, firefighters, EMS, officers in shades, blue nitrile gloves. The canoe storage guy loaning a big boat hook. His still form gently lifted, blanketed on the gurney, face paused in grave as a carved pharaoh's. The crowd of joggers, mums, and idle walkers traded news. I saw him on the boardwalk an hour ago. I'm sure it's the same man. People said he was in their yard. No one asked who or how he ended here in the small waves at Silver Birch Avenue's foot. Afterwards, a copper poise sliced vectors in hot, wet air. Glass eye fixed on where he was, and then wasn't. Okay, I hope that worked. Did you hear the guitar? Yeah. Hallelujah. Okay, that's it for my part. No, I've got a few more things. All right, Morning Thunder. Semi-trailer roaring east, westerly packed bus break off each other's rear views and rock decaying pavement loose. Thunder opens morning, one season, slipping into the open maw of the next. Soft clouds with different politics, arcing voltage. Noise shakes the sleepy city, echoes across the silent cemeteries. Troubles mayoralty candidates never heard from. Muffles the one madman who is actually right. About change with no handles for passenger assistance. About forces to which you are a provisional footnote. Unforecast, implacable. Good morning to you. Okay, the next one, just briefly explain. I live 2 blocks from the big waterworks building in the beaches. I'm sure some of you are familiar with it. And it was, the building of it was part of Michael Ondaatje's first novel, In the Skin of a Lion. So I often go walking there, and they were doing some fixing up and renovations to it. And they had historic photographs of when it was built, which was in the late 20s and early 30s. It's almost 100 years ago. So it starts with, and it was nicknamed the Palace of Purification. It's where a third of Toronto gets its drinking water from this plant. So quote from Michael Ondaatje, "This will take time, but there is order here, very faint, very human." Regard the heroic scope of this building, the vaulted windows, sweep of walls, blurred at borders, hammering on the roof, half seen inside recesses, step the men whose hands raised this whole structure. They're in canvas coveralls, dowdy suspenders, battered fedoras, rough tweed caps, one in a cardigan knit by his wife. Labor magic, turning blueprints, lumber and sand to soaring edifice, slaking our thirst a century later. No hard hats, safety lines, eye protection. Just men graying into ghosts, holding up the tower's glue of sweat and time. They slip through walls under a full moon, walk its silver snake, look back at what they built. Okay, and the next one's called bees. As you probably know, the bees in the world are becoming almost an endangered species, and people are still trying to figure out why. So this is about that. All across the continent, bees are vanishing, setting out to dust their hairy little bodies with glimmering gold pollen, never returning to stroke the queen with feathery antennae. Pulsing hives become papery wastes, abandoned larvae writhe blindly in hexagons, crops and wildflowers no longer swell, the bees not coming back. Stars vibrate to the whine of one-way wings, honeybots down to the last lick, beekeepers' boxes stand, tombs of hope. Meanwhile, in an under-decorated cell, Paris Hilton finally wonders if actions have consequences, and the Prez shifts in his big decision-making chair, ponders how to weasel out of that war thing. The commuter floors his big Lexus. Broken links, all of us in a vast network of chains. Maybe it's cell phones or agricultural nicotinoids, but the bees are leaving. No one can hum their song again. Okay, and one more depressing poem, and then things will get a little more upbeat, I hope. It's almost the 50th anniversary of the biggest mass murder in Toronto, when that crazy guy drove a van in North York running down people and killed, I don't know, 10 or 12 people. So I wrote this right after the day after that happened. My neighbor fights at dawn with her mom, then goes silent. Her little dog barks endlessly. My knock unanswered. I fear something's wrong. Call the superintendent. She's okay. So many aren't. My daily walk is stuffed with poem seeds, small kindnesses along the street, a chalkboard sign. There are millions of heavy hearts today, but they beat as one. A hole torn through my trust of strangers as death, deranged, rented a prosaic white van, mowed down walkers. What so enlarges rage that its bearer must erase anyone? Why are men so broken that their anger ignites the world? Small crocuses appear, but no answers. By the imaginary fairy door to an oak's root hole, children leave tiny toys, adults handwritten prayers. 3 smiling girls take selfies in clouded light, but who really sees each of us? Okay, and now on to poems that are about love and other slightly more positive stuff. Exploratory voyage. Heavy the lid that closes the light, tight on fall's turning edge. The periphery of your personality fills with astronomical phenomena. Here is the Van Allen belt, dangerous microdebris and toxic radiation. Behold the star nursery where unborn dreams stream and roll. We will not speak of the dark space. It is not you, but the little moons of you orbiting irregularly. Here is the dark side we cannot see, where a lost planetary rover bares its nose, zooms no more. Here is where the sun breaks strangely with multiple moons, a cold gleam. There, finally, is your liquid heart, which entered, changes everything. Okay, and this one you'll probably recognize is, the title is a parody of a well-known song by Paul Simon. Uncouplets, or 50 Ways to Love Your Leaver. She dumped him because he wouldn't look for work and they hadn't had sex in 7 years. He dumped her. They were both looking older, but he didn't have to look at himself every day. She dumped him because he couldn't see her grief or angels. He dumped her because she talked under her breath and he hadn't signed up for a narrated rom-com. She dumped him because he was flirting with the dark arts and clouds of evil appeared on his brow. He dumped her because she narrowed his creativity, which he proved by never writing another poem. She dumped him because of that high-pitched wheeze he made when really excited. He dumped her because his new guru said her aura had negative energy. She dumped him because every time Mercury went retrograde, he couldn't understand her words. He dumped her when he met a 20-something who never questioned his opinions. She dumped him because he blew all their savings on a plan to bring back rotary dial telephones. They dumped each other because each wanted to dump, not be. They dumped for the rush, descending the chute. I think I'm getting near the end of my time, so just a couple short ones, and a little more cheerful. Foot road. A student has stomped love into the college lawn's soft snow, and March is melting. Each time I pass the window, I see love is the way boots walk. Love is leaving. Love is leaking into the ground. Love is lessening by the hour. Love, a fading intention. But love feeds the future grass. Love is out there. Just look. And my last one, left behind. Little dots of rainbow glitter emanate from my rug, and I recall seeing them on your cheekbones, as if you naturally leave sparkles the way regular folks drop homely dandruff. Because that's what you do, render pain and longing into joy. Let it rain on me. Let it rain. Thank you.
It's wonderful, John. I think you chose a really good collection of poems, and it's really cohesive between beginning with the drowning and ending with the glitter, you know? Yeah. I hadn't heard the bee poem, so that's very powerful. And some incredible images in your poems. Oh, yeah, thank you. Our next reader is the one and only Andrea Thompson. Yay! Andrea Thompson is a writer, editor, educator, and spoken word artist. She was featured in the critically acclaimed documentary Slam Nation and was host of the Bravo TV series Heart of a Poet. Andrea was the 2009 Canadian Festival of Spoken Word's Poet of Honor. In 2005, her spoken word album, One, was nominated for a Canadian Urban Music Award. In 2019, her album, Solarations, earned her a Golden Beret Award. And in 2001, she received the Pavlik Poetry Prize. Her collection, A Selected History of Soul Speak, was nominated for the Pat Lowther, Raymond Suster, and Robert Croce Awards. Andrea currently teaches spoken word through the University of Toronto's English and Drama Department. Her most recent work is The Good Word, a spoken word album that explores the intersection of Black history and faith. And her website is andreathompson.ca. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you. Okay, 7:23 plus. Okay, I'm just trying to keep track of time. Okay, so I'm really excited to be here. Thank you, Brenda, for hosting, and Jennifer for inviting me. And it's really nice to see so many people here on Wednesday night to celebrate spring. So my first poem is going to be a celebration of spring. And it's a bit of a riff off of a couple of quotes, one by Edna St. Vincent Millay and the other one, T.S. Eliot. And it's called The Great Baptist. I've heard it said that every April, God rewrites the book of Genesis. Streets that were once slush pools of sleet washed clean by rain, the Great Baptist. Daffodils and tulips, Gaia's gift. Offering promise, a cure to the soul, to all of us disconnected from nature after months spent indoors. Muffled and buttoned, we wandered from one source of central heating to another, trapped in a rat maze of underground malls, eyes buried beneath shrouds of woolen hats and scarves. Stars with their crisp winter brilliance went dim from inattention. Though some may call it cruelty, this mixing of memory and desire, I will not be fooled by the cold morning air. I'm glad for the mud, I'm glad for the rain, I'm glad to leave behind the days of hibernating in the cave. I am glad that this deep freeze is over. This land with its seasons, the wisest of teachers, where else but the West do we need a lesson so powerful? Before we will learn how to be released from our own deep freeze, our souls more hospitable to growth, our hearts more willing to open, our love more likely to flow. Tempered by tenacious patience, sunshine becomes more precious. In Demeter's gift of condolence, icicles lose their menace. In celebration of the season, Mother Nature becomes teacher with daily lessons on how to blossom. So instead of an apple, I offer this poem, prayer, wish, blessing, benediction, that through attention I will learn that clouds are no more than illusion. And I will have the strength to let the rain, let the rain, let the rain come. Wisdom being found in the blue of the sky beyond. I pray to God for sweet release, for more moments of peace. Pray that I may be reborn in this life here on earth, that I may flow smoothly on my path, past the rapids of pain and impediments, and that I may heal my mind by staying in the current. I pray for the end of destruction, for the tsunamic force within me to find its expression in compassion. I once read that April comes in like an idiot, babbling and strewing flowers. May I be blessed by the love of such a fool, be washed clean by his rain and drenched in his splendor. Okay. I'm trying to do math here very quickly so I know how much time I have. Terrible at math. Okay, so onwards I go. I wanted to share this. I got asked to read this one and I forgot about it. I'm reading from my book, Selected History of Soul Speak, with this beautiful picture by one of my former students, which I fell in love with. And her name is Sarita Wignall. Okay, so I'm going to share, this is about spoken word. I've been teaching spoken word and we're at the end of the term. So I've been thinking a lot about the history. And in the mid-90s, our first poet laureate of Canada referred to spoken word to the Globe and Mail as an abomination. And around the same time, the Paris Review described it as the death of the art. So I wrote this poem in response to those hyperbolic moments of nonsense. Okay, so this is called, oh, and I also have a quote by Adebe Durango Adam, a wonderful poet, and she called spoken word poetry in the key of urgency. This is called The Abominable Snowball of Spoken Word. In this postmodern literary era, spoken word practitioners are undaunted word warriors, weaponizing vernacular to beat, rap, and slam the elitist agents of erasure. We are poetry in the key of urgency because this here house is on fire. We don't have time for the luxury of coy coquettishness as we attempt to reinvent the wheel of oral culture and play poetic tennis with the net down. We don't have time to pussyfoot around. We need words that empower the populace, not another gated community to be excluded from. Don't need to be told we lack the basic educational prerequisites required to understand this poem. We need words that work, not the tyranny of exclusionary, impenetrable verse. We need voice. Need words like water, need vernacular like shelter, need dialect like tribe, need idiom like a village, like a kitchen to chat in. We need a language to make love with. Need a poetry that will hold us, protect us. We need words that will call us home. Okay, so yeah, poetry in the key of urgency. Kate, this is good, eh? The Deve, she's quick, and she did that while she just came up with that while she was hosting an event. She's pretty quick on her feet, that one. All right, so this is called Wound Turned to Light. The light of witnessing existence makes everything beautiful again, brings rebirth to those disowned parts of self, those shattered fragments the world deems unworthy. Those darkened days and tired nights of soul deep weariness become refreshed through the act of simply recording what it is to be ourselves, unabashed, naked, living on this crushed ball of stardust, what it is to be us, hurtling through the universe, bouncing up against each other like ideological pinballs at a time when the polarity of this planet has sent so many of us off on our own diametrical trajectory away from the core. when the weight of interpersonal animosity has become crippling, when the term respectfully disagree is about to become extinct. In this moment, I bow down and thank God for bestowing us with the gift of creativity, for endowing all of us humans a life-giving method of release to the pressures of simply existing, a way to translate pain into beauty, a way to open up the valve on it all and begin to let off steam. What a gift it is to be given this moment, to be invited to express all the colors of this jagged emotional palette without judgment and simply say yes. Yes to the raw red of rage. Yes to the yellow of hope. Yes to the bruise-hearted blues. Yes to unfathomable purple. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, and amen to it all. Okay, so I'm going to leave the book and go to the album. This is the album. That's my great grandmother on somebody's knee. She's one of these little twins here. My great grandmother. I met her, but I was not old enough to realize how important of a moment that was. Okay, so this album is about the intersection of Black history and faith, and this poem is called The Promise. Free will, the greatest gift ever to be given to humans, and also the first step along the slippery slope that tumbles us into temptation, into that widest gate, that broadest way that paves the path towards destruction. Always in these stories, there's a choice, a ripe apple, a shiny coin, our thirst quenched, question answered, ego stroked, desire fulfilled. But when it comes easy as buttery smooth, alluring words of reassurance from the forked tongue of a serpent, we know, like an ancestral memory of falling entwined in our genetic makeup, an instinctive recollection of the ripe taste of sin, we know. For many seasons spent in the thick of this dense human jungle, many seasons of desperation stalking the plains in hunger, we know, we have learned that often the easy kill is no more than bait, no more than a trick we remember, like a gift passed down through generations by world-worn ancestors limping and sore from their time caught in the searing snap of buried leg traps. Like an heirloom, this gift of wariness is passed on, an instinct of avoidance as primordial as a migratory path of a hummingbird escaping winter, though sometimes we become undone and that wariness is overcome by weariness, and we are blinded like Bartimaeus before that day that Jesus saved him. We are seduced by the lure of our own incessant yearning, a tugging at the flesh that leads us like Esau to abandon our birthright, forfeit our inheritance for a bowl of grits or a drink or a smoke or a stroke or a paycheck or a kiss from the ruthless lips of Judas. Here in the heart of these moments of allurement, what I wish most for is to remember the price and the catch, the fall and the trap. May I have the wisdom and courage it takes to wait for that which exists beyond the reach of impatience, not as temptation, but as promise. Okay, so coming into the home stretch here. For the last one, I'm going to do a little screen share and share with you a video that I made with some images that I got from Pexels, I think it was a site. And the music is by Everin Oz, who collaborated with me on the album. And this is a poem about my great-great-great-grandfather. And here we go. This train is bound for glory, this train. This train is bound for glory, this train. This train is bound for glory, don't carry nothing but the righteous and the holy. This train is bound for glory, this train. Born a slave on a West Virginian plantation, you practiced your escape daily.
ran to the river over and over again, got shot twice during thwarted attempts at emancipation. You were whipped on the regular and still refused to turn a blind eye to the blatant injustice of plantation life. You refused to turn a deaf ear to the cries of your brothers, refused to allow the label slave to define your existence. They may have branded you like cattle, but they never managed to find a way to get under your skin. What spark of light ignited you to leave behind your life, your children, your wife? What inspired the desire to leave everything behind, all for the gamble that one day you'd make it all the way up north to freedom? Great grandfather, I wonder, did you leave the field brazenly in the full light of day, or did you wait for nightfall to cover your final departure? I wonder, how far did you get before they set the hounds loose? Did you hear them? Were you haunted by images of tearing in your skin? Were you ever lost on that underground railroad path, wondering if you were on your own exiled adventure in the wilderness? Your own 40 years of wandering, but without the gift of manna or signs and wonders to keep you going. Did you ever give up and strike some barren, unsuspecting rock in pure frustration? Were you ever tempted to circle back again to the familiar chains of your enslavement? Did you ever feel you'd been abandoned, handed over to the unrestrained sadism of Satan, like some cast out of the garden ill-fated plaything? Cursed like Job with an assortment of tortures and seemingly unending malevolence, fortunately. Were you suspicious of among Quakers who offered food and shelter? Were you afraid their kindness was a trick that would end with you being sold back into slavery again, or hanging limp from a tree like some dangling token to hatred and ignorance? Or was the faith of those Quakers a factor in your own deliverance, in your grace-fueled decision to dedicate your life to God, an impassioned emissary of the Great Commission? What led you to make that sacred covenant, to cut a swath through the Red Sea of America, over Lake Erie's turbulent waters, sailing towards the relative safety of northern shores? What burning bush contained the all that made you become the Baptist minister to a flock of weary? Was your soul broken to submission? Or was your journey to the land of milk and honey punctuated by gifts of serendipity, blessings, benevolence, grace? Did the face of God show himself? Breathtaking ruby sunsets, clear, crisp nights illuminated by the shine and glory of their great. I now sit here in the oblivious privilege of my relative abundance, safety, comfort. What message did the Holy Spirit whisper to keep you informed? And did you ever imagine us, Janine, legacy, your curious descendants, living up here decades later, becoming poets, parents, professors, lawyers? Did you foresee where your courage would land us, would lead us all? Here, from this vantage point of hindsight, I offer this poem as gratitude, as testament to the fugitive pilgrimage that led to my becoming a fourth generation Black Canadian, now strong, now free, thriving in this true North Soul. Thank you, and I'm sorry that the letters you had to ask someone else to write didn't deliver absolution, didn't help you find your wife. Thank you, and I forgive you for not knowing how to be a father and treating your own wounded children like chattel. Thank you. And God only knows the scars you carried over those miles, the wounds replicated in all our DNA, and the wounds you were able to heal for all of us with the power of your faith. This train is bound for glory, this train. This train is bound for glory, this train. This train is bound for glory, don't care nothing but the righteous and the holy. This train is bound for glory, this train.
Okay, so that is it for me. Sorry, it went over a minute. My timing is not my forte. Thanks so much, everybody.
Was phenomenal, Andrea.
Oh,
It
thanks.
just, I don't know, you can weave together so much history, passion, compassion, love, faith. I can bow down to you, lady.
Oh, thank you, sister. Thank you. Oh,
Uh,
thank you.
that was just magnificent, the whole reading, and your videos are incredible.
Hmm.
I've watched them all because they show up on my YouTube because I'm subscribed to you. So I've seen all of them, and I'm like, wow,
Thank you.
yeah. So
And thanks for watching my YouTube. I thank you.
well, I'm watching on my TV, so I can't leave a comment, but
Oh, that's
it's okay. I'm
I
one of those
appreciate
view
it.
counts.
Thank
It's
you. hon.
okay.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, yeah, that was a very powerful video poem. Wow. I'm sure everybody would like to unmute and talk, but I think we have to go on, and we will be taking a break when we open all the mics and we can talk. And then we will have time at the end for questions as well. Oh.
Okay, John, will you introduce our next reader?
I will, yes. And yes, thank you, Andrea, for a wonderful reading. It reminded me why it's better to go before Andrea than after her in a reading series. Anyway, I'd like to introduce Brenda Clues, who you have already heard from a little bit. She's a Zimbabwe-born Canadian multimedia poet, painter, video poet, with 2 books titled Fury, published by Guernica, and Fugue in Green by Quattro. She's also published in Crossbridge, Synchronized Chaos, that's a great name for a journal, Juniper, and Movement, Our Bodies in Action anthology. Her artwork has appeared on journal covers, in solo shows, York University Urban Gallery and Q Space, and group shows. It is also featured on her book covers. She hosts Minstrels and Bards, a soiree at the Transact Club in Toronto. Her website is https://brendaclues.com. Brenda.
Thank you, John. I changed my reading multiple times this afternoon because I was going to show a video that I did 13 years ago, and I went from political poems, which would have been good to follow after our brilliant Andrea, but and finally, I don't know, about six o'clock, I thought, oh wait, I've got some poems I set to music at one time, so I'm going to play some of those in 2 videos, and I'm gonna have to share screen a number of times. But the reason for this is because I didn't want to repeat myself John did Many Muses in December, and I read a bunch of stuff. And then I had my birthday gathering, and I read some more personal poetry there. And then Jennifer's gathering here, and then Long Dash, my writers group has a poetry month reading coming up in April. So, you know, I only have so many new poems. So I'm digging back through the archives. So let me just get started here. So I've got sound on. Let me just, hopefully, I sure hope I can find everything. Okay, so can you see that was the album cover? Yeah. Okay, so if I can, the windows are so big, I'm not getting back to my Finder. How do I do this? Okay, there we are. So Veils to Clothe Venus is from, I don't know, I wrote maybe 15 poems starting on Botticelli's Venus, and I never finished that project. But this was one of the poems from that project. So I'm reading, and I did the mix, and the music was by a wonderful musician, Buzz Hendricks, kind of a jazz musician in New York. And I knew him on Jamendo, which is where I was sharing my work and where I found much of the work. And he created this music for the poem because I sent him the recording. So it was just lovely. It's called Veils to Clothe Venus. Just do this if you can hear it.
Veils to clothe Botticelli's Venus with. A poem arises, catching the energy, imparting meaning, hesitant, faltering for words, images, rhythms. My love for you. Slowly, through endless revisions, shaping this love. Disparate layers emerge, an undercurrent infiltrated with strands, approaches, understandings, memories, hopes, desires. The way the sensual mind composes. We create ourselves through each other. It's more complete who I am with you. Not a version of reality, but a veil of being. The poem of love that is a transparent garment we clothe ourselves with. Our metaphors and concepts of a world which resists our gaze. Writing is a deeply meditative act. A language of love. A listening.
And the next one I'll play is Starfire in the Night, which was with Frank Harper's Moon's Eve from his album Fingerstyle Set 1. And
Starfire in the night, sliding around the world through many crowds. neurons. Mumbai, New York, Rio, like an image from a billboard. Flat like film, a projection of light. These burning neurons, their shadow prism shifts. No separation. A market in Madrid, harsh sleet of Himalaya, blade of grass in the prairies. I could be dying, or in a spacesuit on the moon. No separation between me and the world, which is my dreaming paradise. Nothing is lost. Release the inner hold. There is no tight control. Right by sunlight. Dark hours of running on this side of living in the bright world of the lion's mouth. Flying into outer space where the universe contains such combustion. Stars burn for billions of years, keeping galaxies alive. I searched for you and found you everywhere. If you could set all your dissolves to a nanosecond, it would be bliss. Starfire in the night.
Where's the Zoom window? Zoom, come back. Where's Zoom? Zoom. It's Zoom has disappeared. I'll stop the share. There we go. Okay, so now a short video. Okay, so can I share? Oh yeah. Wait a minute. How do I cancel this? I'm not seeing it. Earth Dance Finder Chrome. Oh, there it is. Okay. So this is it's a short video. I did it probably the same time period. It was before 2010. And this video is actually my most popular. It's had about 33,000 views. And it is on women and violence. So can you see that? Yes. Okay.
Birth dance. 1. Birthing the birth, writing the bearing of the child. These words labor their dance. I am being born, bearing my child into the world. From maiden to mother, momentous, terrifying. Do I forget that I am giving birth? That there is a baby in this hurricane of elements, bashing, pummeling, forcing my body open, 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 and the writing of the body of the woman stretching into two. My flesh rebels, recoils, but that energy thunders, separating, separating, apart. I have no conscious control, none. I am barely conscious. Did I envision it differently? My belly curves like a full moon. I saw the blood, but not the bleeding. I thought labor lulled and crested us toward birth. I felt the tumble of hidden arms, legs roving under my white, stretched skin. But not how my body would split, earthquake-like, releasing, releasing. 2. Liquid tinged with blood flows down my legs, pools on the floor, the breaking of the waters, a sign of the beginning. That sack of fluid, ocean of nutrients in which my baby floats, ruptures, and I wait sleeplessly for it to begin. I imagine contractions as my belly tightens, softens. My body is placid, and I am fearful of forced birth in hospital, of Pitocin epidural, episiotomy, forceps, of green hospital gowns, masks, fetal monitors, of incubators, isolates, nurseries, of the medical notion of birthing as illness. Labor must begin within 24 hours for our midwife to deliver our baby at home. My husband drives the midwife home mid-afternoon. I sway in a rocking chair, waiting, waiting. Then, out of the silence of my womb, an inner motion collects itself and sweeps as if into a tunnel, a passage, a whirlpool. I lurch to the bathroom and throw up. The friend who is with me wipes blood off the floor. We are shaking, shaking at the intensity, the mess of fluids, our aloneness. 3. I am heavy with ripeness. My body is a fruit opening, releasing its nourished, protected seed. I am splitting, stretching, gaping. I am sweet with birth. I am succulent. I am a dying flower streaked with blood. My body shudders, tenses, aches. I am shrieking, shrieking. I have no sky breath. I am not gloriously dancing a swan song. I am pulled under in the darkness of pain. I crave the coolness of water, the caress. We pour a bath. I sit in it for a moment before another contraction begins, and I leap out and scream, jumping, holding onto my husband. I am an animal laboring. I am no longer fully human. I am all body, primal, beyond language. I am heaving, thrashing, resisting. My hips are cracking. I am hyperventilating. I beg for drugs. In my weakness, I find strength, shouting, chanting, I can't, I can't, I can't. Once begun, this cannot be stopped. I try to stop. I want to slow down. I want to rest. I try to lie down, but my contractions come so fast, so furiously. My whole universe is exploding. I am out of control. I am dying into birth. 4. In breath out, breath in, breath out, breath in, breath out, breath. Birth dance, birth dance, birth dance. The birth word bearing down. I must push, but my midwife asks, I wait. A lip remains. When, swollen with fertility, flowing, ripe breasts risen, earthquake releasing fruit, opening belly universe, ripe life. Enter here, exit from there. At this crux, the center of the universe. Transition, transition, transition. Now I am round, I am full, and you are the new moon. Come forth, arise, appear, grow, spring, be born. I heave on the bed, I kneel on the floor, I thrash, I push, and I push, and I gasp, and I push, and I push, and I gasp. In breath, out breath, in breath, out breath, in breath, out breath. Birth dance, birth dance, birth dance. We break the mesh of time and space in the vortex closing and opening. I have forgotten, I forget the birth word. 5. The head emerges. I touch the dark form between my legs, wet, wrinkled. It feels like earth collapsing on itself, reaching out of itself. We are approaching what is receding. It disappears. I push deeply. It reappears, in and out, backward and forward, shuddering into life. I am an enormous mammal moaning into the night of the great emptiness, my membrane stretching, holding everything together as it divides. This is not ecstasy. I am terrified of the separating that I crave, the crucial passage between, this incomparable coming into being, the crowning of the baby. 6. Bearing out of me, brilliant opal of my dark sky, from my body, the other, that final push heaving suddenly and finally, the birth canal, a volcanic tunnel bursting. I am a lotus opening my fire petals, blazing as you are born, our sky blue umbilicus flowing between us, glowing. The midwife holds your shoulders. Here is your baby, and I lean down and pull my child from my womb and lay him on my breast. His eyes, my eyes, gaze in the peace of the doubly newborn. I face his father, overflowing joy, relief, awe. We've crossed the threshold, all of us. Dying, I am born into the mother. I am being born out of the mother. I am the child within myself, blooming out of myself. And now I am bleeding, bleeding. The afterbirth pours out of me here.
The paintings in 1986 when I became pregnant with my first child. So they're kind of a visual journey of my body. And then after he was born, it took 2 years to write the poem. So, yeah.
It was very powerful, Brenda. But it's
you.
almost painful. It took me right back there to that experience, and I was like right in it. It was so
Giving birth is not,
not ecstasy.
for the faint of heart. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just opening the documents again, and let me see here. So thank you for with me. I appreciate it. Sorry to take up so much time.
It's worth the wait.
Thank you. You're being very sweet, but I appreciate it. So we have the wonderful one and only Alan Weiss. Can you unmute yourself, Alan? Because you're next.
Yep.
Alan Weiss is a Toronto fiction writer and professor of English and Humanities at York University. He is the author of 3 story cycles, Living Room, Making the Rounds, and most recently, Telescope. Other short stories, both realistic and fantastic, have appeared in various anthologies and magazines, including Wascana Review on Spec and the Tesseract anthology series. His latest story, A Tartan of Many Colors, was published recently in the Other Covenants, Alternate Histories of the Jewish People. And I heard him say at the beginning of the Zoom that he is going to actually read some poetry,
Yeah.
maybe along with some other stuff. So I'm looking forward to your reading, Alan. Welcome, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. Do I have screen sharing power? But because this was advertised as a poetry reading, I thought I'd show you what poetry shouldn't be like so that you can compare and contrast that to the real poetry that you've heard. In any case, I'll be reading that one. George Washington sits in draped Roman splendor, scepter and marble gleaming with godhood. Worshippers pay their photographic homage, blind to the joke. And the other one I'll read is that one at the top. Food court folk singer calling us to the backwoods as we spoon our frozen yogurt, suck the last of the orange soda through the stubborn ice, and finish our postcard blue with trivia. Yeah, I'm sorry, but that's as good as it gets. Anyway, all right, I'm going to read some fiction, which I'm a little more comfortable with. And this, by the way, is my kind of most recent story collection, Telescope, from Guernica Editions. I say kind of sort of because it's already, believe it or not, getting on to 4 years old. But there was this thing called COVID that interfered with my ability to actually launch it all the ways that I wanted to. So anyway, we're still talking about it. But what I'm going to do is to read from the beginning of a story that will be appearing in an anthology shortly. There's this absolutely wonderful series of academic conferences that aren't really fully academic. They're on the short story. And they feature as much creative work as academic work. They invite lots of writers to come in, read their stories. It's a celebration of the short story. And for the past few conferences, they've been publishing an anthology in association with the conferences. This short story will be appearing in the next of those anthologies. So I'm just going to start reading. And what time do I have till? If somebody
You
can
have
tell
about
me.
15 minutes from
Yeah,
now.
okay.
so-
All right, I'll just read the beginning of it. It's called Fire Trees, and it's a science fiction story. Although there are some who say that it is not. We've had huge debates about this, but anyway, I'll just read for a little while, just the beginning of the story. In the morning, the fire trees were all aflame, and Melanie gazed out the window at the bizarre flickering lights at the ends of their branches. No one had ever been able to explain to her the mechanism behind the small flames, something about oxygen release and the actions of tiny electric bugs, a defense mechanism against the creatures that would gnaw the trees to death. Hugh and Cho were still asleep, oblivious for now to the sheer horror of having to share a room again. She drank her raspberry tea and wondered what she'd gotten herself into. As the red sun rose, the mist beyond the distant trees burned away, and the flames went out like the candles on some giant's birthday cake. Mom? It was Cho, rubbing his eyes with one hand and straightening his Deathbringer pajamas with the other. Despite her warnings, his feet were bare, She didn't want him walking around on a strange world, in a strange home on a stranger world without slippers. His hair was a complete wreck. He insisted on wearing it at the standard 8-year-old's length and spray style. She smiled and put the teacup down, resisting the urge to go over and hug him. The only thing worse for him than sharing a room was getting a mother's hug. His substitute was to occasionally lean against her and let her stroke his head. He lifted an arm to watch one of the moving hollows on his sleeve, then joined her at the picture window overlooking the colony's vegetable gardens and the forest beyond. Melanie ran her hand along his cheek. "It looks different," he said, "nicer." "It does." She hadn't wanted to arrive at night. Cho, at least, was bound to be daunted by the huge, brightly lit port, the black forests, the unfamiliar hab made worse by the darkness outside. Hugh, for his part, would sneer at everything, no matter when they arrived. But having to go to bed right away was bound to add oxygen to his own fires. "What are we going to have for breakfast?" "The usual." She'd been smart enough to pack as much of the kids' favorite foods as possible. "Rice puffs." They'd have enough to get used to without missing their cereals and breads. Good. He found the dining nook she'd pointed out to him the night before, remembering how to work the retractable table and chairs. "Why does it smell funny in here?" "It's all new." She didn't have much experience herself with the smell of truly new plasteel. This was the first new home she'd ever been able to afford, and only thanks to the divorce. "I don't like it." She dragged the blue Styrofoam cooler in from the hall where they dumped everything not immediately necessary, and opened it to reveal all the earth amenities she'd managed to stuff into it. After pulling out the cereal bag, she dug through for the milk powder. Incredibly, it wasn't there. "Sorry, honey, I think I forgot to bring the milk." "Mom!" he cried, looking at her as if he caught her committing a war crime. "Can't you just eat it dry?" He often liked to snack on it that way, munching away while he watched TV. "But that wasn't in the morning." He let out an exasperated sigh and said, "Okay, if I have to." She had remembered his morning oranges and laid one on the table for him, hoping its scent overwhelmed the plastiels. "Is your brother up yet?" Cho shrugged. "I don't know, I don't think so." At that moment, Hugh, already dressed in khaki Thermex shirt and jeans, emerged squinting from their room. "You still snore, putz," he told Cho. Do not, he mocked. "You kept me up all night." "Good morning," Melanie said in a neutral voice. She knew better than to try playing the part of morale officer with him. "Morning," he replied grudgingly before trying to cope with the fact there seemed to be only one kitchen chair. Just as his half-asleep brain remembered how to unfold another from the wall, Cho did it for him. "You pull on the little handle like this." "I know, putz." She rolled her eyes. Telling a kid something he already knows is an unforgivable sin. "Please stop using that word," she said, knowing it was futile. Hugh flopped down onto the semicircular seat and leaned a cheek on one hand while he drew lines on the tabletop with the other. He was too old to want her to get his breakfast, though she was tempted to. Anything to make this easier for him. "Hungry?" she asked. "Did we have to come here?" She'd hoped there'd be at least some grace period. She was too tired herself to argue with him, so she just said, "You'll find some stuff in the cooler." "I want to go back to Earth." "So do I," Cho said, predictably. "I don't even know where we are." "I showed you on the star maps before we left." She knew it was a lame response. "So?" "Just eat. We'll get you guys orientated later." She turned her back and stared out the window as she finished her tea. Hugh finally got up and rummaged through the cooler for his rolls and butter. He was past drinking milk for breakfast. That was babyish. So at least she would be spared complaints on that score. He noisily returned to the table, and she glanced back to see him sawing away at 2 poppy seed rolls, his face sporting his familiar scowl. At least they brought that much from home. In fact, they all needed orientation. She knew a bit about the school, work, the bios just beyond the colony. She had learned how to get supplies. She knew about some of the local fruits and vegetables and bizarre shapes, colors. But being able to tell a ripe silverberry was a different matter. Her kids were used to the small classes they'd had at home and the individual instruction they'd gotten on the station and on board ship. It would take them a while to adjust to sharing their learning with 20 others. So she decided to bring them to the school the first day, only to watch the proceedings and see what to expect. She was glad Beaton let kids socialize a bit before having to study on top of it. They stepped out onto their new world and gazed around them. The wind felt like sandpaper and smelled vaguely of ozone and rust. She knew it was only her imagination, but even the solid-looking bulbous clouds seemed weird. The chocolate-colored trees in the colony were short, like semi-bonsais, and the fire trees along the perimeter of the forest outside the colony were dark green, almost black. Between the white cube habs curled pathways of tawny gravel, coated with dust that betrayed footprints. A few people passed by and nodded at them. Cho was too shy and Hugh too morose to answer. The school was a squat gray building shaped incongruously like a 5-story pagoda. Blaine Newman, the parents' board chair, greeted her at the door. He was a short, soft-spoken man. Melanie, hi, and you're Hugh and Cho? They both nodded, Cho a little more enthusiastically. He was still at the age when he wanted to please. Blaine led them inside. Why don't you two stand or find seats at the back of the classroom over there while I talk to your mother? The school was divided into 2 classes, a senior and a junior, the age cutoff being around 11 or so. Kids worked together at hollows, raucously solving math problems or composing playlets performed by figurines that looked very real. I know this is hard for you, Blaine said. I'm sorry we couldn't greet you in our usual manner last night. Normally, newcomers to Beaton were met with a giant party designed to make them feel right at home. But with how tired they'd all been, they decided that wasn't a good idea. I wish you could have, she said. Would have been nice. Tonight, they walked down the corridor to the gym. Blaine, she noticed, had a slight limp. Everybody does some of the teaching, he said. I'm just here to coordinate. He leaned against the gym's door frame. Melanie, if you have to ask for help, don't feel ashamed or shy about it. Everybody does it first. Nobody's a romantic or an idealist here. We can't afford to be. We help each other because we have to. That's how colonies succeed. Earth's rules don't apply here. She smiled. It's a nice idea. She meant the planet's philosophy, but she also liked his last words. After all, she'd come here to get away from Earth. The same goes for your kids, Melanie. They'll be expected to help and ask for help. I'll try to convince them to do that. I'm not sure you can. Behind him, a frighteningly huge flying insect bumped against one of the gym's windows. Melanie suppressed a shudder. They'll just have to grow into it. I guess so. The insect darted away. For a second, she wanted to grab her kids and leave on the next flight out. She had visions of one of those monsters attacking the boys, stinging them to death in the schoolyard. No amount of nano-induced immunity could reassure her. Why not just leave them here for a while to get used to things while you get settled? They'll be okay. Sure. She hoped he couldn't tell how half-hearted that was. She didn't want to seem like a coward, a poor prospect for colony life, but she also didn't want to leave Hugh and Cho alone here, not so soon at least. I knew Owen, Blaine said as they walked back to the classroom. He was only here for a little while, wasn't he? Yes. Owen had spent about 2 or 3 years here before work forced him to return to Earth. That's why she'd chosen Beaton, a place he'd approve of that wouldn't make it seem she'd kidnapped the kids. He'd actually enjoy coming out here once in a while to see them. He threatened to take her to court when he heard she was taking them off planet, but relented when she told him where she was bringing them. He didn't quite fit in, Blaine said. What? So it wasn't just work. Not everyone does. Things became much clearer. Owen was the sort of man who had no trouble helping others, but mainly out of a sense of superiority. Trying to give him advice was a sure way to get an argument in return. His arrogance had cost him many friends and even a job or two. She stayed with him for the kids' sake as long as possible. Then she simply couldn't take the put-downs and constructive criticism any longer. She was a bit too self-sufficient for him, and even found herself constantly trying to prove to him that she didn't need his direction. She wasn't at all surprised that he and Beaton hadn't gotten along. And I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. You got to make an audio book. Like close my eyes and listen. It was wow.
Thank you.
You really, you don't like act the different voices, but you embody them somehow. So yeah, and what a mysterious little story about relationships, but it can't possibly be fully about relationships, is it?
Let's just say it's about relationships in the sense of how a different environment can change the way you deal with other people.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. Yeah, yeah. You know, because the children, the husband and wife, and yes, yeah. So quite a capture. I really enjoyed that.
Thanks.
So hopefully I'll get to read the whole story at some point. Find out what happened or where the relationships went. How they developed or undeveloped. Okay, well, moving along, where is the bios? Now we have our star, Jennifer Hosain. Jennifer's been really under with a terrible bout of the flu this week. She's running a fever today, which is why she asked me to host. She's looking a little pale, but hopefully, can you get through your reading, do you think?
I'm gonna do my best, and if not, we have a plan B. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm plan B, by the way. So I'm going to be reading along with Jennifer just in case her voice skips out. And we'll take over. So if that happens, hopefully not, because it's your timing and your poems and your passion and your experiences, and your voice is the best. So Jennifer Hosain is a Montreal-born writer, visual artist, and educator of Trinidadian and South Asian ancestry, residing in Takaronto, Toronto. Her debut collection of poetry, A Map of Rain Days, published by Guernica Editions in 2020, was lit for the League of Canadian Poets 2021 Pat Lowther Memorial Award. Her poems, short fiction, creative nonfiction, and a play have been published in The Fiddlehead, The Quarantine Review, Event, Rubicon, Makara, and more, as well as translated into Hungarian for the anthology Crystal Garden. I won't attempt to say the Hungarian. Her artwork, which is fabulous, has appeared on book covers, in magazines, and in solo and group exhibitions in Toronto. It is also featured on the cover of A Map of Rain Days. And her website is jenniferhosain, one word, .ca. So welcome.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you so much for taking over for me. I am so grateful to you for this. All right, I'm going to read some poems from my book, A Map of Rain Days, as well as some newer poems. I'm just going to share the screen. The artwork that you'll see goes along with the poems, so they are connected. I'm not altogether 100% here, so please forgive me if I say something weird. All right. Okay, just get it ready. Can you see the video? It's not playing yet, but it's up. Okay, great. All right. Okay, the first poem is the title poem of my book, Map of Rain Days. I am bent by the way that these things go, put my face in my hands and pull the skin taut across miles and miles. Walk down the corridors in my mother's bruised shoes. My mother's toes are crooked and curled in a misguided arthritic map of rain days. When my mother's heart began to fail, she had surgery, then strokes that rendered her childlike. The next poem is Heart. My mother's heart begins to drift away, but we are selfish and tell her to let them fix it, and we pace and pace the days. Don't tell her it's a poor sign, aortic valves open and close. It keeps her herself until she is not herself. Voice crooked, face fallen, buttons askew, and pants half on the floor. I cannot begin. Beloved mother is a clipped-winged bird that floats around in lace-edged nightgowns, soft skin like a schoolgirl's, shooing away the cats and always packing her clothes to go home. A few days after my mother passed, my daughter moved to Los Angeles. The next poem is Wedding Day for Natasha. You are the princess beneath my pillow. I am the pea that sways in the corners of your night. You are my map of the city. Every place is only meaningful in the way that you were there with me. This is the airport that you are leaving me from. This is the road that takes me away from you. When you leave, you take the light away. I wait for your whisper. Hold tight to the pillow that you laid your head upon, as if it were love itself. Pull stitches out of your discarded dresses, unraveling the years between us. Then I begin to sew your wedding dress. Tree lights string me across the desert, my feet parched with longing. Across the universe in a sun-bleached room, I lay the snow-white dress on the bed. Today is your wedding day. You tug at the hem of your dress, dip white heel into the grass. In the Hollywood afternoon, you are breathtakingly happy. In the morning, I have to return to my life without you. I press my tears to the door of your hotel room to feel your breath. When I look for you in mirrors, you shine behind my eyes. Sometimes you whisper to me to wrap you tight in the star-punched night. Next couple of poems, still connected to my daughter, My Mother Who Tugs at Me. I am my mother who tugs at me while daughter sits at my table, only in Januaries, snow crawling up the gray wall of days, weaving a carpet of hair underfoot while the subway staggers and moans below. Days slow as she moves through rooms, doors snap and crack. Beneath the bedroom door, light creeps between years and the shadows of her feet. Her breath pauses in the air. Fill my cups. Fill my cups with the lack of you. No strands of fine hair settling in the snow of my coffee. No whispers behind the walls of night that lie between us. No clothing piled in the days of corners that I turn around and around in the palms of my heart. From the time I was 2 years old until I was 11, I shared a bedroom in our Montreal flat with my aunt. She took care of me when my mother was at work and was like a second mother to me. A few years ago, she moved with my uncle to Sudbury to be with her son and grandchildren. The next poem is Exile, Canadian Shield. In the city, I cannot stop. In the Canadian Shield, there is stillness, windows and sky. Auntie cannot bear to live in this faraway place, while uncle is thinning out of the living world. They hide in the basement as if they are hidden in rock and snow. Auntie moved into my bedroom when I was 2. She slipped the fear out of the night when she entered the room. On her wedding day, I danced in the front yard, drunk on cheap something, stomping snow, marveling at the moon and the whoosh in my head. I see their footprints getting smaller in the snow, but it is summer and the rain has birthed a fog of mosquitoes. Next poem is Fall. The leaves have fallen from their hosts the way I fell from you. Once you were air, then you were cinders that I spat up now and then. Spark. How I loved you as I flew across the metropolis to fall at your door, turn the key, creep into your bed. I rubbed the sleep from your eyes, you turned me to the wall. That's how we loved through the winter and spring, before you lost your home. So I took you in and you took me over, the way a spark consumes a forest, turned me to ash that stuck to the soles of your feet during your tirades and blackouts, splattered your fabulous dinners across the kitchen walls, banged on the bedroom door while your son pleaded, "Daddy, please." Next one is used to. Sex used to be everything to me, the much of it, the lack of it, the colors that fled across the black backs of my eyes, pressed into black night, flecks of damp across the backs of thighs, dip dancing me in a silent room to the ruckus in my head. I put myself in terrible corners to feel that slap tumble through dead-end days. Men put me in a box or a bag or an envelope, but the stick always loosened and I fell out thump onto the days. The next poem is Widow. I did not want a husband. I wanted a tree, a forest, a black-winged crow, black night and blue earth, a bed of rocks. I wanted an ancient man-boy, salt-eyed and ragged. I wanted fingertips for eyes, but now I am old, a faithless widow, soft boys filling the spaces that rain cannot. Silenced. I am silenced by ugly deeds, dense hands that stretch like sinew across a face, by tongues, their loudness and chatter, by nights I hold between my breaths, my tongue tied into paper cuts, skin woven into night, hands into parchment. The next one is When the River Meets. When the river meets the haggard years with starlit dawn and broken mandibles, ribs snapped like toothpicks beneath the fractured moonlight, the body repairs despite the nights unfolding like caricatures, a sleight of hand like a moonbeam or a wooden beam. His hands on me in ways, a slip of the tongue fractures the day, collapses my face and other men against the floor, again the floor. I'm just pausing for a second so I can have a sip of my drink and then I'll continue. The next poem is 1977. 1. Blend into trees and sky in brown skin. Stay tight to tree bark. Hold your breath between the crisp steps of teenagers slipping past in a cloud. Shed the cloak of trees, veer towards home where your thick socks shuffle on the parquet floor. 2. School is black terror, so you walk into books like Alice, blue jeans and tight skin, hallucinogens and hatred spun in webs through the hallowed halls. 3. You walk a thin gauntlet alone. The following prose poem began while I was waiting for a streetcar across the street from the Nestle chocolate factory, one of the many times I tried to escape. Travels. The sky gives off the sweet odor of chocolate. I am bathed in a downpour of Nestle chocolate and still thinking of you. I cannot erase the years or your voice from my answering machine. You surround me. From the window of the Don Mills 25 bus, the valley opens up like a womb in the rain. I carry you around in the hollow of my chest. In your ribs, you dig tunnels, hundreds of tunnels, and you won't leave. For every step forward, I take 2 steps back, always towards you. Sorry, no one knows why I stay, why you're back. You make a mask for your face with your brittle anger. If I walked off this bus onto the frozen field, the field would become a lake, its crisp, translucent surface cracking and drawing me in. The bleak caress of snow, your cool hands in a circle around my neck. The apartment is as cold as frozen fields. My limbs sculpt snow angels in the sheets. You bring ice into the room. Just pausing for a second again to have a sip. The next poem, Safe House, began in a magazine shop where a song was playing on a speaker, and the song turned me around from the time I had heard it before to the present time when I was free of that time. Safe house. Everyone needs a safe house. There are fleeting thoughts, fists and fingernails, black and blue. 4-year-old's toes slipping out from beneath the blue Mexican blanket, sleeping angel's face and just washed spun silk hair. These are the things that stay. How many times did she wait in the next room, suspended in the thin comfort of her tiny dolls? All the things I took her through. My mother used to say, "I'll give you something to cry about." Sometimes I peer into the windows of the places we lived in then, wondering at the lives that are lived there now. When I was a child, stairs led from our narrow dining room to a cavernous cellar. It was black and damp, and my father killed a rat there, buried it in the backyard beneath my bedroom window. Every night I waited for my aunt to come to bed and turn her face to the wall on the other side of the room. Only then, was I safe? I have never liked to sleep alone, often making the mistake of settling on someone to help pass the nights. My mother said I carried too much anger with me. That was the reason I failed with men. She did not ask why I was angry or if the men were angry, but it's okay for men, isn't it? No one wants to hear why I stayed. I didn't. I left and he followed, pounded on my door, followed me on the street until I tired of being afraid of the shadows and let him back in. The devil, you know. They thought I was weak, but I was never. Tonight, someone is banging on a wall, blows that run through concrete and steel all the way up to the 20th floor where I am taut, poised to run. My bones drift towards breaking, but this time, there are no bruises to hide beneath the shirt sleeves, no fictions to tell about bathtubs and door jams. This time, there's a safe house and a good man. During the pandemic, I began to reconsider my place in the world. While I had not felt that I belonged, now I felt that I had a place, despite how I was made to believe. The next poem is Country. On a Friday night in the pandemic, you spin me around to Wichita lineman, and I think, country? Though I have often sheltered in the houses of pale men. I've dimmed the lights and the night is a blank slate, but you don't know my country. It hangs from a thread behind the smell my mother kneaded into the evenings that shifted on my skin like damnation. My aunt played country on the stereo, our silhouettes cavorting in the afternoons, while her own lineman Beau came around, tobacco teasing the day. I was assaulted on the subway in Toronto in December 2021. At that time, it was not a very common occurrence, but attacks on the public transit have increased 46% over the previous year. For a year after, I could not face the world, or I crawled along the streets in terror. At the beginning of this year, though, I turned myself around, deciding that I don't have to let the world break me again, as long as I keep standing up to it. The next poem is Fear Brightens Your Eyes on the Subway. Monsters spill out in the rush hour skirmish. Skater boys swivel you to alert, their awful racket, boards clattering. Sorry, you say to the man who smacks you with his backpack. Nothing, you say to the man who propels you through the train door with a cardboard box, as if you were a mere scatter of debris. Don't walk on the danger yellow platform edge against the impending crowd and the towering white man, pleased with the loathing he so easily spills onto you, fencing you in between his bicycle and the killing tracks. But you are just crawling home in the waning afternoon, your face reaching his sour-smelling jacket that snuffs out your day, and you cry, why? But no one looks your way. Just almost done here. Around the same time, I began to pick at my skin constantly, scarring my torso and legs. The next poem is raw. Peel stories from skin until you are raw, unpigmented. No weeping paragraphs endure, the bed tangled with figments of you. And my last poem is a happier poem, November, for Dwayne. November is a painting that we step into, falling head over heels into scarlet, laughter on our faces, our hearts are heavy with the mundane. But driving home across the luminous landscape, Indian summer haze across the lake, and feet restless for sandals, I conjure you in my passenger seat as the wind turns my hair into a whorl, and then, what more is there that I can want? Sorry. Thank you so much for listening.
That was like phenomenal, Jennifer.
Thank you, Brenda.
I don't know. I feel like we're witnessing something. I love all the new paintings that you're showing.
Thank you.
A lot of paintings I haven't seen, and they're very powerful with the poems. Like you really create a unity of word and image, or poetry and painting. It's one kind of pulsing unity. Very moving and passionate and full of soul and pain. And wow. So we have come to the end of the evening. You can unmute yourselves if you're allowed to. Let me see. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody can. I will stop the recording. Or should I?
No, keep it
going. I'll edit later. Yeah, I'll edit later.
Yeah. So you can all mentor, give feedback, ask questions, chat, hang out.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Those who are both poets and artists, how do you divide your time? Like, how do you decide? It sounds like a stupid question, but like, how do you decide how many hours to put into each thing, each area?
For me, it's a toss-up. How much time I have left over after work, and then I pick one and focus on it. In the summers when I'm off, I kind of go between both, but you got to focus on one when there's time, and it just, I know, one of them drags you in, and then you stay with it.
I see. Okay.
For me, that's for me. Brenda, what about you?
I mean, it didn't seem to matter when I was working full-time, single mother of 2 children. When I was writing, I would write in the morning, I would write on lunch break at work, on coffee breaks. I would come home, cook dinner, do everything, and then write at night. And I don't know, when it grabs you, the energy. And then other times it's like you're just in a desert. You're just like the birth paintings almost took me into them, like they called me. So about maybe once a month, I would just get, I couldn't not paint. So I would get my, I would go and set up everything, and they're large watercolors. They were all painted on the floor straight out of the tubes.
Sorry. Did you paint them close to the birth? Like within years
Oh, no,
after?
I painted them. No, I painted them
After.
as it was happening.
Wow,
So, yeah, but not when I was giving birth.
obviously.
So I started
That
the
would be cool.
painting at about 3 months. The first one is maybe 3 or 4 months pregnant. And I did work from Polaroids my husband at the time took. So I had, you know, the form. But yes, of course, the birth ones were done after he was born, but they were done probably that year. So 1986 to 1987 was all the paintings. But you know, they pull you in, Mina. You know, you just somehow get pulled into you've got it going, it's working, it's happening, and it's
Right.
almost like you just become a conduit to something else that's moving through you.
Sure.
And we all wait for those moments. And really how much time you have, at least for me, isn't the main thing, because
Yeah.
you can work very quickly, you can edit forever. But I'm not as a painter like Jennifer is, who has done so much work, and she's just waiting to retire so that she can start to paint more fully. Her paintings are incredible, but writing is a little easier because you can do that when you're sitting in bed or you're on the couch, or you're painting requires you to be in a space to set it all up,
Right.
you know, to have a studio space. But even if you have a studio space, you still got to go in and get everything ready and clean up all your brushes and your paints after, or they will dry. And so it's a different process, you know, for sure. But you're driven. All I can say is one is kind of driven, right, Jennifer? There's times when you just got to paint, or there's something that's sitting there that wants you to paint it.
Yeah.
Or, like a memory, or you know, it kind of propels you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very
You're
interesting.
propelled, Mina.
Pardon?
Yeah, you're propelled in your poems. I know that.
But I envy the two-sided, you know, that you're able to do the art and the writing. I used to do sculptures when I was younger. I miss it.
Oh, go back to it.
Yeah, I'd like to.
I did a sculpture course at Toronto School of Art. I think it was 13 weeks. It was figurative, and I did do a video and a poem on it. But it was one model, the same pose for 13 weeks, 3-hour sessions. So, and it was all levels of ability. Toronto School of Art has some really good, yeah, I'd check it out. I would check it out. I'd dive back into it. I wouldn't just kind of miss it and wish for it. I'd say, well, it's time. It's time. If you're feeling that way, it's time.
Okay.